Welcome, folks, to another episode of the 10X Business Coaches Down Under podcast. We have got a great episode for you this time around with Tiffany English, known as Tiff from Access Offshoring. And what we're going to focus on is how you can be applying the 10X mindset, 10X marketing, 10X sales, and 10X follow-up strategies to your business, just like Tiff is doing. Tiff, welcome.
Hi, thanks guys. Good to be here.
It's a delight to have you because you've got an awesome journey. Can you tell us a little bit about Access Offshoring just so that our audience knows what you do and ideally can reach out and get some business with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're essentially an offshore recruitment specialist, which means we recruit only out of the Philippines market. We specialize in full-time dedicated roles, and we have a really specific process in matching up not only skill set, but cultural fit, so we can hire for long-term roles and therefore long tenure. So it's really exciting. We get to place a lot of Filipinos and completely change their trajectory of life whilst completely also changing the trajectory of the Aussie business.
Now, that's just a fascinating business. How do you get into a business like that? How do you get to have that mission of, hey, helping out Filipinos and giving them a full-time job, obviously at Australian rates, which is going to change their life, often even their village, I guess. How does that happen?
I employed my first Filipino about 15 years ago, I think it was. So I was certainly one of the pioneers of offshoring. My background's in business improvement. So essentially I would walk into businesses, implement systems, hire people and make myself redundant. And so they were just part of my model. And with Filipino staff, they're now sitting about a third of Aussie wages. You can get talent, any sort of back office roles that you would recruit for locally, you can find in the Philippines. And so it just came this opportunity where our clients were asking me to do it for them. And I thought, hey, there's probably something to this. And organically, before you knew it, I had a business that was fairly large. So that's where we are now.
And what would some of those typical back office roles look like? Because people hear that, but it's like we might as well share with what some of the roles that you do tend to place. And I think the important element that you mentioned is these are full-time roles.
They are, yeah. There's lots of different ways that you can employ Filipinos and any other country for that matter. We focus on the Philippines and we focus on a full-time dedicated model. We have things from base level accounts admin right through to qualified CFOs with Australian tax experience. We have very technical roles from engineers and architects to draftees, and then service admins and call center operators. We have marketing specialists. We have HR and recruitment specialists, and we do very specific roles in some of the financial services spaces, so brokers, buyers agents, real estate agents, you name it, we can generally find the talent. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That's so big cool. Population. Much bigger population, right? And to work for an Australian business is pretty prestigious for a Filipino, so it's nice. We've quickly become an employer of choice out of the Philippines, and we're able to offer really robust roles for about a third of the Aussie price. So
fabulous.
Fantastic. Well, what about if we dive into, because obviously, Tiff, I mean, that's an amazing business and I know that you've grown it to be extremely successful, but we're all things 10X. So tell me, how did you come into the 10X ecosystem? Like how did you come across 10X? And then share with me, why did you, because it is a little bit against the grain. I know it's not against the grain for your thinking or my thinking or Gary's thinking. I'm thinking about general people, right? It does push up against some people's thinking. So how did you come across it and why did you become part of the ecosystem?
Good question. I have fairly strong education background. I have 4 typical university degrees and have done a lot of professional development. Yeah, it's a lot, Gary. And yeah, the HECSTET also keeps counting like that. So I did a lot of education and then followed a lot of gurus and came across Grant, and I'm trying to think of the specifics. I think it was potentially one of his books and a mixture of that and a webinar that I came across online. And we're obviously in Oz, so I get up in the middle of the night very happily and watch a lot of the webinars. And My husband's always like, what are you doing again? But yes, I would have read the 10X rule, sell or be sold. I've also read, I think I'm close to most of them. Yep, 10X quotes. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. I'm impressed. And it was probably about 12 months ago, Alison. So it was about the time when I had another consulting business this time last year and made the decision to put all of my eggs into the offshoring world and went, hey, we need to pick up sales. And I think one of the core drivers for me was, how do we document this process? I'm very good at sales off the cuff, but I want to start building out my sales team, and I want to make sure, therefore, that I've got the right processes in place and I can tell people how to mimic this. And so that was one of my core drivers, and I felt Grant could really show us how to do that. And yeah, I mean, we've doubled in the last 12 months. So I would say he's a lot to thank for that.
And when we say doubled, guys, we're not like you're a multiple seven-figure business. Just to put some reality on what doubled means, we're talking real hardcore numbers. We're in the multiple six figures here, so that's no mean feat to double. It's not like you doubled from 100,000 to 200,000. You've doubled multiple six figures. So
seven figures. Yeah,
exactly, and like, which is huge. That's massive, and I know that. You know, it's not that you actually have a massive team. How many are in your team?
We have 9 direct staff.
Yeah. So you just have an extremely effective team.
We do.
And do you believe, like, how do you think, because I know that you've got your staff on Cardone University, part of that, obviously, right, as you said, it allows your whole organization to have a system that can be duplicated. Everyone's on the same page, heading toward the same goal, talking the same language. So it allows that what goes on in your head to actually be put into a system with scripts and everything like that as well. What do you think the main benefit has been from having you all on Cardone University doing that every single day?
Well, we're potentially a bit unique in the way that my mind went in how I could utilize it. So when you think of my team, there's 9 of us. There's only 2 of the 9 that sit in the level of what we would call direct sales or front end sales. A lot of the rest of the team, particularly we've got 5 doing Cardone U now. The other 3 are actually in talent. And so what that means is I looked at it from a perspective of everybody in the sales and talent team are selling, but the talent team are selling to candidates. They're selling to the clients to convince them that they're the right candidate. They're selling to clients for another candidate. And so there was all of these elements of sales that we could really incorporate into the business. And I think the core benefit so far has been to actually just expose the team to think of their role slightly different. There's not just KPIs from an operational perspective, there's KPIs from a sales perspective in each of those roles. And so having Cardone U supporting that and being able to take conversations that I'm having with my direct salesperson locally plus the talent team and having those conversations overlap has been phenomenal. It's been such an exciting exercise. And so we've been able to kind of push that sales thinking to the whole team.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding you correctly, right, you're now developing a sales-focused organizations, a sales-focused culture within the culture that you've been able to establish anyway, right? Like, you've had a healthy culture. You wouldn't have built the business to where it was without that, with that philanthropic aspect where you're helping people anyway. You're helping people here, you're helping people in the Philippines. But now you are developing that overlay aspect of a sales-driven culture. And what do you like about that idea? Because, Tiff, a lot of people, when they think of sales, certainly when I speak to a lot of people, they're like, right, like it's the last thing. They're like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be pushy. Oh, like a typical Australian culture, right? She'll be right, mate. All of those things, like we're pushing up against quite a lot of cultural anomalies, I think, particularly here in Australia and in New Zealand, where it's just not part of the standard mindset. So how have you found that?
It's interesting. I've obviously got a Filipino culture heavy in my business as well. And there's some aspects of that I would say they're not as much, she'll be right, as Aussies, which has been really valuable for us. But I would also say that it has just instilled this further level of service. And so we don't look at it necessarily as a hardcore sell while, you know, behind the scenes that may be what the KPIs look like. We're actually just like, how can we better serve the customers, and how do we make sure that the candidates are being put in the right positions for the right companies? And if we are able to follow and do what Grant trains in terms of follow-ups and touch points, then we're actually just doing a much better job at serving the customer. And so if we're able to look at it from that perspective, and it's not just that hard sell, I guess that ick or that frustration removes itself pretty heavily, but also the results have encouraged the team to keep going. Like, we've been able to see customers and talent respond really well, and our feedback and success rate has been higher. And so that's given the whole team the encouragement to go, actually, this works.
Yeah, they're seeing results, right?
Absolutely.
And, you know, that we all know success breeds success.
Yep.
And also structure, because, you know, well, Gary and I and you, we use Cardone University every day. So we understand the structure of that from the very beginning of 10x Super Life, right? And attitude, and looking at your whole entire life, all the way through to sales, follow-up, closing. Like, it's a huge ecosystem that you can integrate into your business. But it's from top to bottom. And I love that, because, you know, that is a 10x principle, is have service in your heart. Sales as a service. Sales is a service, because if you are not selling your product to someone, you can't help them. You can't help anyone if they don't have your product. How have you then successfully helped them? You have not, right?
Yeah, totally.
And Tiff, when you spoke about your 4 degrees, and this is really fascinating. I have 3 degrees, so you got me covered, which is awesome. One of the things about coming into Cardone University is I have had my experience about the content and its applicability and practical application as compared to my 3 degrees, 2 of which were pretty awesome. One of them was just okay. So I'm interested from your perspective, you know, highly educated, and from a practical application and then education within your own business. Because you talked about mindset, you talked about common language, you talked about how it's fed into understanding about KPIs. What can you tell us about the experience of you having your own time inside Cardone University from your own learnings perspective?
I think it's really different, and I think it is far more averse to the real world, right? Like, so I've got a marketing, a public relations, an accounting degree, and an MBA. It's all very helpful and have certainly helped me in building business, no doubt about it. Some, like yours, Gary, more helpful than the others. But from a very practical approach, I think what Cardone U has been able to achieve for me and the team is actually, like, these are the conversations you're having every day in business. And this is actually what business looks like. These are the rebuttals you're going to get. And actually, this is how you can overcome it. And this is the exact process that is tried, tested, and you can put in play. It doesn't come from a theory base and potentially an older theory. I think this is just tried and tested for the long term. So I think it's really changed. And I think my team, I certainly don't hire on the back end of making sure that they've got any degree, let alone 4. And so the ability that I've had to be able to put them in Cardone U and get very practical skills, and then be able to go in and not feel overwhelmed. They're short snippets. They're easy to do. There's quizzes at the end to make sure that they've understood. I can chase and see how well they've done, and if there's areas they need extra support in. That has been probably the most critical part to us.
The tracking, I think that's huge, right? Is that ability to actually track how your team is going, and you, right? Like,
it holds us all. It holds us all accountable too, right? Like, and then I get super competitive, and if someone's ahead of me, then I'm like firing through again. I'm like, that's it, 3 hours of Cardone U this weekend. But yeah, and also I think accountability is such a huge part of business and of just personal growth. And that is a big factor of our business, and everyone in the team knows that. And so that tracking ability just helps hold us accountable to that and stays true to what our core values as a business are.
And that, like, accountability, it seems in a lot of businesses is a dirty word, right? Because they're struggling to hold people accountable because they don't start with accountability. It's gotten too wishy-washy for a lot of businesses, and it is one of the huge benefits of being in the 10X world is accountability is right at the forefront of everything that we do.
Yep.
And your evidence with your business of the power of accountability. And interestingly, and I'd be interested in your perspective on this, Tiff, is it actually makes the conversations easier when people know what they're going to be accountable for.
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm constantly hiring people, and part of our service offering is actually teaching Australian teams how to build high-performing Filipino teams, right? And so there's more to it than just let's place a person and walk away. I actually spend so much time not only on the cultural differences and how to really embed that, but also these are the steps you have to take to have high-performing teams. And I always start with, are you super clear on what this role needs to achieve? And what would success look like for you in this role? Because if you're not clear on that, you can guarantee that that person you've just hired won't be either. And from the get-go, there will be zero accountability and everyone's going to be unhappy. So I put so much focus on that in terms of what I train my clients is let's really bed this down. And then also, how do we put touch points in place to make sure that's being done? And so I talk about skills matrices, we talk about monthly check-in templates, daily huddles, end-of-day reports, and all of that we provide for clients and walk them through it. But you're 100% right. Like, if you don't start with accountability at day one, you are practically just building a business where people are, on their own journey.
I think
not very good on the 10X model.
Yeah, I think that's something very interesting about that, though, is often the business owner isn't willing to do that for themselves.
Well, I think they also just don't know. Right, there's some naivety and just lack of awareness when it comes to building a business. And lots of people go from whatever their specialty is to, holy crap, all of a sudden I've got 10 people working for me. What happened? I really enjoyed just hitting the hammer. And so I think there's this element of there's a lack of awareness and understanding as to how to build high-performing teams. And so you have to embed yourself. And Grant has a lot of information on that too. I've done the people workshops with Grant Cardone and his team. And that was absolutely pivotal, all things that I completely ring on about constantly. But I think there's just there has to be this level of understanding. If you want to start building teams and you want to hit the metrics that are required to run a successful business with teams, you have to understand how to build systems and structure around that.
So, Tiff, with your commitment to your learning, you've doubled in 7 figures your own business. You've got your 4 degrees. You've been in Cardone University for a year. You'd be forgiven for going, I don't need to do that. I know it all. Why haven't you gone down that path?
Because I don't know it all. I don't have a business the size of Grant Cardone's, right? So that's the reality. And so I'm now at the point where I'm like, okay, these are the next steps. Follow the people that have done what you've done. I don't take advice from anyone who hasn't done what I'm trying to achieve. That's they generally just don't have the right advice for me at the time. So I'm very focused on following the people that have core values that are in line with me, but also outcomes that I'm trying to achieve. And until I get to that point where I have my own private jet, Gary, then there's obviously more for me to learn.
What a great answer. And look, there's so many. Look, we know statistically down under, we've got 75% of the small businesses, which is nearly 2.5 million. So 75% of 2.5 million, those business owners are earning less than the average Australian wage. They're not doing 7 figures.
And they're not getting sick leave. They're not getting annual leave. It's worse. You're worse off.
Yeah. But their mental block to them being willing to learn and willing to learn how to market and learn how to sell is so significant. It's even stopping them, as you mentioned before. They're not even aware that they don't have these skills. They're aware of their current situation business-wise, but even admitting that's pretty tough for a lot of them until they go under, unfortunately.
Yeah, and, totally.
We want to, promote people like you and let people say, hey, there is a methodology. It absolutely works, but you've got to put the time and effort in, and you must be committed.
Yep.
And you have to go beyond the willingness to go beyond just being good at what you do to building a business. They're not the same thing, right?
No, they're totally different.
you go into business, even like you said, Tiff, you kind of fell into the business. A lot of people fall into the business, but you fell into the business to build a business. Whereas a lot of people are falling into a business to get out of something, not to get into something. And they're completely different. That change where you move into actually build. And, also from what you've just stated as well, Tiff, in terms of where I don't have a private jet yet, which is awesome. But you've got to have, like, the thing that keeps you hungry, right, is having big goals and continuing to expand on those big goals and looking out in the world at what's actually possible. It's like, well, if it's possible for Grant to have a private jet, why not us, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's our turn.
But you got to be willing to put in the activity and the commitment. Absolutely. Right? Like it doesn't come if you just sit around wait for it to land on my driveway, although that would be pleasant. I don't think it would fit, but that'd be nice.
So how many folk try to tell you that you work too hard?
Do you know what? It's changed a lot. I think if you're able to, you very quickly change the people you hang out with. And I learned that really early. So the people that used to tell me I work too hard just simply aren't in my life anymore. We just don't have the same values. But I also I always have believed in the concept. I don't believe in a work-life balance. I just believe in balance. And there's days like tonight where it's, Sunday night and I'm working late, or it might be 10 o'clock on a Monday morning and the kids need something and that's where I am, right? So for me, it's just a balance, and I've built a life where I'm able to achieve that, and that hasn't come easily. That has taken a lot of effort, a lot of dedication, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of sweat and tears. But I think I just no longer, the people that are in my life now are the people that are cheerleading me on, and I'm doing the same for them. So I think it's about making sure you've got the right people in your corner, because if you don't, it's easy to be swayed. Like you don't want to pick up the phone when you're having a crap day in business and someone to say you work too hard anyway, just throw in the towel, because that is not the call you want to have. It is pull up your knickers, get back to work and do what you're on this planet to do. What are you still bitching about it for? And so that's the people I have in my life now.
Yeah. You not need to tell you to put your big girl panties on.
Totally. Right? Yeah.
Okay. That's
and
nice.
I do the same.
A moan and a whinge. Move on. Right. Moving along.
Yeah.
We're gonna blur me out when we get to the big girl panties part of the conversation. Okay?
Gary, sometimes you have to pull yours up too. We all do.
Well, yeah, now you did mention kids plural. Can I ask how many?
Yeah, I have 2 stepsons, 13 and 15.
And so they require time and dedication.
Yeah,
obviously.
Totally. Yeah, we have them 50-50. And I'm very, very much in their lives. I, do all the school stuff, the doctor stuff, everything that a normal mum would do. And they do. They need a lot of time and a lot of energy. So.
And you can still have your balance, because you define what it is.
Absolutely.
That's the beauty, right?
Yeah.
And this word work, it's got such negative connotations, unfortunately, for so many people. And yet when you're doing what you want to do and you're passionate about it, you just get busy and do it, and you work out the balance. And like you said, you might be at school or doing something at 10 a.m. with the family, and you'd be doing tonight when you're working. So with 10X, in terms of your journey, where do you see it's taking you?
Where's it taking me, or where has it taken me?
Where is it taking you?
I think what it's done for me predominantly, I look back to pretty much Grant's definition of what 10X means, and it comes back to, you can set a goal of whatever, $1,000, or you can 10X that and do whatever activity is required to get as close to that as possibly you can. And worst case is you might miss it, but you're probably a hell of a lot better off than you would have been at the initial goal, right? And so that's how I always look at it. And when I look at activity, I'm always looking at what are the smart ways that I can work to put in extensive amounts of activity. My habits align with that. My day-to-day activity aligns with that. And I do go above and beyond. And you know what? It probably in most cases doesn't take much more effort than if you were just doing average. Like you talk about 10X activity, and yeah, I agree, but but the effort level, if you get yourself into the right habits and the right flow and you're starting to achieve results, and it all just starts to happen and you actually end up in this state of flow. So it actually feels easier. I know that sounds absolutely ludicrous and maybe that's just my perspective, but when I am in completely aligned with 10x, then I'm in flow. So I think it's taking me to much higher grounds. I would say I've certainly made my goals probably better than 10x. And so it's all about now, what's it going to take to get me as close to that as I possibly can, and what's the worst that can happen?
That's awesome. And I think, you're saying fast versus slow, right? Which is easier. If you think about riding a bike, if you ride a bike slowly, you wobble a lot. It's hard. Whereas you ride a bike fast, it's actually easier. So we have, it's perception. But I agree with you, when you actually move and you are putting, it's the same energy and effort, really. It's just one, you're stopping yourself more, the other you are not.
Yeah, you just got to get out of your own way.
You're getting out of your own way. Exactly.
So, Tiff, if someone was to say to you, hey, look, I've heard about this 10x stuff. It sounds really American. Does it really work in Australia? What would be your 1 minute answer to that?
Yeah, hell yes it does. Like, just look at how I've also married an American, so I might be slightly biased. He's not an over-the-top American though. He's quite the man. But as you would imagine, putting up with me and my shenanigans all the time. But I think if you there's just a different level of service offering out of the States, and it's because the market is more competitive. It's way bigger. The population's larger. To cut through, you have to work harder. And so if anything, it just helps you to stand out, and it just completely accelerates your growth. So yeah, it is different to how most Aussies operate, but why would you settle for how we operate when there's other countries that do it way better? Let's
100%. 10x to that.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm very candid. Did you know that, Gary?
Sorry?
I'm very candid. I don't know if you knew that prior to this.
I'm loving it. We Aussies, we tend to be candid, so that's a good thing. But in full disclosure, my twin brothers lived in the States for 26 years. So when I was saying earlier how he was saying, hey, you got to get on this 10x stuff and got to get on the ground, that's because he lives in that environment. He can see the benefits of it all. So full credit, full kudos to you, Dennis, for getting us in this world. Right, Alison, last question.
So to sign us off, Tiff, is the last question is to you. What does 10x mean to you?
10x has completely changed the trajectory of my life. I'm pretty safe to say that. I think it's made me think bigger, not just in terms of business, but in terms of family, in terms of relationships, in terms of everything. And going back to what we spoke about as the definition before, I think it's, hey, why wouldn't you just completely 10x the goal and try your luck, because it's still going to get you a hell of a lot closer than the original goal. So I think that's what it means to me, just completely changing trajectories and putting in the effort to get there.
Awesome. I love it.
Absolutely love it. And so what are going to be some of the best ways for folks to reach out? We're going to have all the details in the show notes, because we want them to go and join and find out how Access Offshoring can help them with their businesses and get some awesome talent out of the Philippines. What's going to be some of the best ways for them to do that, Tiff?
Yeah, totally. Jump onto my LinkedIn. I've got a heap of content on there, particularly about the Filipino cultural differences and how to build high-performing teams. So whether it's a Filipino team or a local team, there's some great valuable stuff on there. Tiffany English is my name on there. And also, if you want, jump on our website, accessoffshoring.com.au, and submit an inquiry, and it'll come through to me.
Absolutely love it. So we really appreciate your time, especially on a Sunday evening. Not that folks are going to know that when they see the actual show, but this was recorded on a Sunday evening, folks. And Tiff, we both really, from the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate your time and being such a 10x person on our podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I've loved it.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.